Hello, Steph.
Hello.
We're never going to get over the American lady that introduces us to the Zoom
Oh,
sessions.
every time. I don't know, it just starts to get more and more comical.
Why is this?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I think it's because we're just like, she just appeared one day and now she's just, you can't get away from her. She's just like always there.
Maybe that can be our New Year's resolution to try and have some sort of kudos around the American introduction.
Yeah, totally. It would be really cool if like every time it alternated and it was just like, I don't know, a different language or a different accent. I think that would be quite amusing. Come
Yes,
on, like the Zoom, up your game, like get some
up
new
your
people on
game.
there.
So talking of New Year, today we're going to talk about, well, we said we didn't want it to be almost one of those preachy type episodes where you sometimes, well, I certainly have in the past, listen to podcasts and it's do this, don't do this. This is what you should do to set yourself up for success. And I've definitely found myself coming from a background of everything being so intense that I then really latch onto that. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. I have to do this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've probably had similar with yourself or clients. And it's so overwhelming. I mean, one year I ended up tracking my food on Christmas Day, and it was, so hard for my mum, but also it just made the day very pressurized.
Yeah, it does. I think when you're focusing on the external, like anything, I mean, if we are obviously talking about Christmas here, but when you're so focused on the food you're going to eat or when the next meal is or what the proportion of calories are in that meal, or you're not thoroughly in the moment of enjoying that time with your friends or your family or whoever else you're with.
Mm.
And I think it can kind of take over your mindset a little bit, and before you know it, Christmas is over and you're back to that kind of tracking thought process anyway.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit of a dampener.
Yeah. And following on really from last week's episode, when you start to, pre-plan everything, when it's around these times that maybe you don't need to pre-plan, especially like we said before, if you're in prep, it's non-negotiable a lot of the time, and that's how it is. If you want to do your best, you're going to need to stick to your plan. If you're in your off season or maintenance or whatever phase you're in, then that you can eyeball food, you can be sensible, or you can go, actually, do you know what, I really don't care, I want to get stuck in. So you can do it to whatever degree you want, because you've got so much knowledge already. Even if this has been your first year competing, you're still going to have a hell of a lot of knowledge there.
100%. It's just exactly about where you are in the phase of whether it's off season or prep, like you said. If you're somebody who isn't really starting prep till the new year, but you're still maybe keeping things tidy and preparing yourself for that drop in the new year, you can still be sensible. It's about not overdoing it and being smart with macronutrients and calories. So like with a lot of my guys who are concerned about around that time of the year, it's that simple. Okay, we look at the overarching calorie intake they have through the week, and we almost dissect that into lower days so that they can use a larger amount of the calorie intake on the days that are going to be those big intakes, like your Boxing Day or your Christmas Day, or maybe it's a work do, or something like that. And it's just, again, being smart with things like choices of the foods.
Yeah. There's so many different ways to manipulate and see that as well. Like you just touched on there, like today, for instance, I'm going for dinner later. So I've pretty much hoarded macros all day.
Yeah.
And, I had a protein shake for breakfast. I then had like a portion of chicken and some grapes and an apple. And then I've had a pot of yogurt, and that's literally all I've had all day. I've trained, done my steps, and then I'm at a point where I'm going to have a 3-course meal, and I won't worry about the macros there because I've pretty much lived on protein all day and a little bit of carbs.
Yeah.
So that works really well for me. And even on Christmas Day, I mean, I always joke and say, I don't know how people have like a full-on fry up, then they have the meal, the pudding, the cheese board, the chocolates throughout the day. Like I think I would feel really ill. Yeah. Like I always just have a shake in the morning, literally just a shake, and I walk for like 2 hours and then I cook Christmas dinner and have it about 1 o'clock, and then the rest of the day I just see how I feel. But you know, some people go all in.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I suppose it comes down to like what your Christmas looks like. You know, my Christmas is sort of similar to yours. Like I usually get up, have maybe a bowl of oats and a shake. I'll go train. Maybe I am one of those people that trains on Christmas Day because I like it.
Oh yeah.
Not because I feel like I have to earn my dinner.
That's the difference.
That's the difference. I like it because I like to have fun. I usually see people in there. I put my Christmas hat on. I have a bit of a laugh, and it's good fun. So, you know, that's something that I like to do. And then I'm ready for it, and you can 100%. Like build up for that. But yeah, some people, you know, that is a foodie day, and that's a day where they're going to get up, and from the second they get up to the second they go to bed, it's just grazing, having stuff, eating through the day. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like that's totally fine. And, you know, you can be pretty good with Christmas Day, actually, in terms of a health perspective. It's loads of veggies, loads of good, nice meats, you know, if you're obviously a meat eater, or on the flip side, if you're vegan or vegetarian, there's tons of alternatives, nut roasts, like loads of stuff. And it's just about being mindful that maybe your Christmas Day looks less of the processed foods and sugary foods and high fat foods, and more of the, I'm going to stack my plate with tons of sweet potato, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and then your meat or meat alternative. And if mum or friend or family are cooking and you are concerned about maybe the saturated fats being cooked in, then you can always have that conversation with your family and say, right, I want to get stuck in and have the whole works, but I just wonder if you could maybe put my portion of veg and stuff in a steamer rather than a frying pan, for example. Do you know what I mean? Just so that you can be smart with it.
Yeah, I do exactly that. And I even cook, because roasties, for example, roast potatoes, like I don't mind them almost not dry fried, a bit of oil, but I'll just put a bit of olive oil and that's enough for me, and I keep turning them. Whereas, you know, your standard, maybe like we say, mum roast potatoes.
Like goose fat.
It's literally, goose fat, all the fats, and you know, they're all crispy and whatever. And most people like them like that, but I actually prefer them with the less fat. So it's not because I'm trying to save macros, it's just a preference. So I'll just do a little pot by the side, and then I prefer steamed, you know, broccoli, Brussels, whatever it is. Although, you know, other people that I sit with around the dinner table prefer like Brussels with the lardons and the butter and everything else. So you can have all the different options. And really, you know, if you're with your family and they know what you're doing, hopefully there can be an element of respect for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's being in control of your choices and feeling good about that. So if your choice is just to enjoy the day and have all the food and not worry about it, that's just as okay as the person who decides to be considerate to maybe their intake because of their own needs for feeling good in themselves. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, 100%. It's just being really conscious that you're making the choice born out of the right reasons for you, not born out of the kind of negative, and we've talked about this, the negative thought patterns that come in and go, oh my God, if I eat this, I'm going to be fat. If I don't train today, I've not earned this food. Or even feeling pressured by family. So if I don't eat this for my family, I'm going to be perceived as X. Like, these are like really challenging thought patterns to have, and they happen all the time. And I think it's a little exercise for people to do is to sort of, this is what I get my guys to do again, is to sit down and go, right, you know what your Christmas is going to look like because you planned. You might be going somewhere, you might be having it in, you might be whatever you're doing. So sit down and just visualize that day and visualize it in multiple of ways. And what is the way you're going to feel most comfortable about it?
Yeah.
And then we can start to actually like map that out, and then they can go into it feeling really good about it.
Yeah.
You know, I just came off a check-in with somebody just before this call who was like, oh, I've had a ton of mince pies this week, and I know I'm going to be having a few bits and pieces on the day, but she's like, but you know, this is a time of year for balance for her. It's about just family, and she's okay with that.
Yeah.
Now she's not on a prep, I must add. She's just starting to get herself prepared for one next year. So that's the difference. Is like she knows she's eating these little things off plan, but she's not berating herself for it.
Yeah. I mean, it is quite a skill to get to that point, as we've touched on before. It is a mind warp, this sport, no matter how you look at it. If you care about your performance and where you're going to end up when you get to stage, you know, these thoughts are going to be going through your head probably daily. Yeah. In regards to, can I factor that in? Should I have that? Oh, well, you know, maybe I can have this at the weekend and I'll do less in the week. All these things are, you know, going through your head on a daily basis. And there's so many scenarios I've got in my head where I've been around other bodybuilders, and I still just love to observe and watch and listen and see how they behave. And sometimes I wish I could just get inside their head and go, it's okay. It's okay. You know, it's rife in our sport. And again, this is why it's so important for us to do these sessions, because it's a real mind warp, and we're at a point now where we can go into Christmas and we're okay with that.
100%.
We have been there where it hasn't been like that. And I mean, I suppose on the flip side, like if you put yourself in that mindset, what are some of the things you can do when you're in that headspace? I guess we could go through maybe some scenarios of, if we went from like Christmas Eve, and you know, what would potentially come up for general population or bodybuilders. So you know, most festivities start from Christmas Eve, don't they?
100%. I think that's a great idea.
So I mean, Christmas Eve is where you might say you're going to get a takeaway on Christmas Eve. I guess that would be quite a standard thing for a lot of people, or go for a meal.
100%.
And again, some gyms aren't open on Christmas Day, so I personally, you know, if my gym's not open, I definitely try and get a good training session in on Christmas Eve anyway, to sort of set myself up for that period of time. Also, we love training, so it's like, you know, it sets us up in our mind as well to feel like we've done a really good session, got a good pump on, and then we can, I don't want to say earn the food either, like you said earlier, it's more enjoy the food. So I would, you know, again, fast throughout the day. Or, you know, have your protein every 3 to 5 hours. There's not really a problem with that, is there? Because, you know, depending on what you're doing that day, I definitely keep protein in, but keeping the carbs and fats down to then allow for a really, really nice meal, whether it's a 3-course meal or you're gonna have a takeaway or whatever it may be, I think lends itself really well. Would you do similar stuff? Or
I think that's a reasonable thing. You know, I agree. I think a lot of people will do something on the Christmas Eve, whether that's out for drinks with friends, got friends over, takeaway meal, maybe it's just making something fancy in. So it is again that being smart through the day, train on the Christmas Eve, because I definitely think it makes you feel better. And prepare like yourself as well, like for maybe the kind of fluctuations in water that you may accrue over the few days of having different stuff. So drink plenty of water on Christmas Eve, I would say, as well, just so that you're just like getting your electrolytes and your water balance right, and just getting yourself prepared for just foods that might be a higher salt intake, because that can really mess people up, as when they wake up, you know, from these meals, and this is just generally across the board, and they're just bloated or holding a lot of water, and it's generally because you're taking in high salt foods and not replenishing the water in your body either. So you know, you need to drink more to have more, if you know what I mean.
Because I get swell, like since that swelling I had sort of 4 weeks out from my last show, any amount of stress I get swelling. But also if I notice, if I have like off-plan foods, say I had an Indian for the first time the other day in ages, and the next morning I had cankles again, and I think, oh god, it's my body's way of just being like, something's off cue here.
Spices and salts are kind of your definite signs for water retention.
Why does it have to taste so good?
I know, damn. But like water is good for so many reasons across Christmas, not just like for balancing, obviously, salts, etc. But it's just It's good for a spacer. So see, like, as well, like, you know, if you're drinking and instead of drinking and just topping your glass and glass, drink a drink and then have a glass of water as a spacer in between. And that will really help like your alcohol consumption, but it will also help any dehydration effects of the alcohol, or just that general groggy feeling like the next day. If you've had enough hydration to support your intake of alcohol through the day, that will really help. It really, really well. People don't realize it. And it is a little bit challenging, because it's a bit awkward to have like, okay, you're going to have a glass of Prosecco and then you're going to down a pint of water. Like, you know, it doesn't have to obviously be a pint, but you want, the ratios are sort of for every couple of units, you want to have near on a pint of water in between. So just be mindful with that as well, because that will make you feel so much better and you won't drink as much.
Yeah.
Because you just won't have
can enjoy it. Yeah. I actually had this conversation with a client the other day. We were saying, you know, I sometimes wish, because I don't normally drink, and probably the last couple of weeks at the weekends I'm having a drink. And I was saying to him, like, it's so annoying. I almost wish I could say to my body, look, I just want to have a couple of days of drinking. Can I not suffer for 5 days after that, please? But the body, what we got to remember as bodybuilders is that, you know, generally 7 days a week we're on it. And then, you know, if you then do 5 days in the week on it and then have 2 days of hardly any sleep, loads of different foods, some alcohol in there, maybe you don't take your supplements and do your sleep routine. And I'm talking from experience, the body really does not like it. The mind is very foggy. And what we need to do is almost, you got to take ownership of that and actually do things like think about your water consumption. Yes, it might, you know, sometimes it might seem boring to do that, and you think, oh, for God's sake, and you get the comments, do you really have to take that today? Do you really have to do that today? And, you know, my advice would be just say to, you know, if you do get questions or you feel uncomfortable, I'm trying to enjoy myself here, but I do need to, you know, keep most of my regime up as much as I can, because then I can enjoy it even more, rather than,
and
you know.
I mean, I'm with you. Like the pain of a hangover is it's never worth it. Never worth it. You sort of think at the time, you're like, yay, I'm having a great time. And you're like, this is hell on earth. Why have I done this to myself again? It's just like, I completely agree with you. You know, you're not always going to be a saint all the time. Of course, you're going to get drunk every now and again if it's something that you're into and you like a bit of an alcohol, and that's okay, because people like it sometimes, as long as you're everything in moderation and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just being, again, don't overdo it on everything. That's the sort of, I suppose, through line here is don't overdo it on the high processed foods. Don't overdo it on the alcohol. Don't overdo it on, you know, saturated fat on for 4 or 5 consecutive days. You know, that on a day may be okay, but it's when you're putting it into Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, potentially things that you've done prior that week, and, you know, if it rolls on over, it's just being mindful that one day off isn't going to break the bank. A morning off after that's probably not going to break the bank either. But when it starts to get to that 3, 4, 5 day off plan, not much training, not much movement, not much water intake and all this sort of stuff, your body is going to throw you a freaking massive curveball.
It hates it. Like, it hates it. And I always find as well, like, so a good start going into Christmas Eve, just having like an evening meal and doing the fasting or the less food during the day. I always find even like Christmas morning, I actually do wake up feeling okay to just have a shake. It's not like, you know, when you do have a takeaway or whatever, the next morning you think, oh, you know, you're still like full up, and you can still taste, if you've had like a takeaway, you can still taste it. And it's sort of there. And I find that I then go into Christmas Day, just have my shake, and then, you know, I'm really hungry for the dinner as well. And for me, I really like that. I mean, I wouldn't want to go into like a proper lush Christmas buffet feeling like I'm not that hungry because I've had like a fry up and half a tin of celebrations. And I always find with things like the celebrations and that, I'm like, I'm always tempted to have them, and then unless I actually am hungry, like, you can even put those things in My Fitness Pal, so it's like, do I even need to have those things?
Exactly.
And then, you know, Christmas Christmas evening is trying to think of how can you, you know, if you want to have things like the cheese poured or whatever, maybe just don't eat till you feel overly full. Just try and enjoy it. But it's very easy. And again, I speak from experience. I want to lap up that moment and I end up eating too much sometimes.
Absolutely.
So it's trying to read the situation, isn't it?
It is. And then you're obviously your movement, like move. Don't just sit eating for 4 or 5 days. Or you can. There's nothing wrong with that. But
I mean, if you can tolerate that and you're in gaining season,
yeah. I mean, just even if you don't have access maybe to your gym on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, just up your steps, like up, you know, go out for nice long walks, maybe with a friend, or if you've got a dog or a cat or whatever else you like to walk.
Rabbit.
It's like your wee guinea pig, you know, whatever. Is just get out and move and try and I always think Christmas is a really good time of year. Yes, you know, you're concerned about or maybe just more aware about your intake because there's lots of choice. But I also think it's a really good time of year to take stock and reflect on the good stuff, because you are wrapping up a year. And I know from my personal experience, taking a bit more time to just get out, go for walks, places, and just clear your head, maybe just like kind of do a bit of a declutter of the year almost, helps. And long walks really help when you set an intention on, I'm going out to walk and I'm just going to think about some of the really good stuff that's happened this year, but also some of the major challenges that I've faced, and maybe try and like process them. Because honestly, see, doing stuff like that, it will take your mind off the concern of what you're eating, what you're doing, micromanaging, like, you know, your steps, your this, your that. You'll just be walking, but you'll be doing something that's productive as well for your own well-being. So I think if you can switch around, I need to do steps, to I'm gonna take these walks and do something with a good intention in, you know, for my mind, maybe listen to some of these crazy podcasts we do, whatever you want to do.
Yes.
Anything that just gets you out of your head space, that will really help as well, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, for people that have even competed for the first time, or whether people are seasoned competitors, what you can do when you reflect on the previous year is, how was your performance? What are you looking to improve on for the following year? What could you take from your performance? You know, what is it you want to achieve competing, and using this sort of downtime, as it were, to have downtime, to do, like you say, a leisurely walk, rather than I have to do 10,000 steps, I have to do this, I have to do that. Put a podcast in, walk, you know, in the forest or on the beach, whatever it is, and reflect and understand what you want to do for the following year.
I love that. I think as well, it sets you up really nicely to then the new year, because you're that whole 2 weeks, like from next week, the 20th, on to New Year, is really a time of stuff. Like you say, you've had your Christmas Eve, you have your Christmas Day, you regret to go into Boxing Day. There's just like a lot of stuff that's not routined. And when people aren't routine, they can get a bit like, oh my God. So it's just thinking, well, with not maybe having the routine as solid as it normally is, what else can I do with that time that's helpful and productive? And I think exactly that, off the back of having maybe some of those longer walks, that's a great chance to move into the following few days and sit with yourself and just go through. I do this all the time. I actually put one up on my Instagram last year of like, I do a 2021 like recap in my mind, and I write things down, and then I set intention for 22, and I've got like a thing that I use that I've just created. It's like a template. You can get loads of them if you search for them, but this is a specific one, just fitness oriented wise, and I'll just go through all of that and then map out some just key things I want to try and achieve. Now, not all of them might be, but I think it does then help you to go, okay, I've used some of this time productively in amongst all the fun stuff I'm doing, and the off-plan stuff I'm doing as well. So it keeps you a little bit more balanced, instead of just going, shit, everything is off routine, I'm freaking out. You know what I mean?
Because if you're not you know, some people don't even have like-minded friends, bodybuilders around them.
Exactly.
And if you've never really negated a Christmas period before, those friends that you spent Christmas with last year are going to potentially expect that you'll be, oh yeah, I'm all in this Christmas. And actually it's very, very hard to just switch into, I can eat what I want, do what I want, not worry about all of the bodybuilding fundamentals that we do every day. And I just feel like it's so unrealistic to try and put that on yourself. You know, I'm always in scenarios where I'll stay with friends or other people. And I've mentioned this before. Stephen says to me, like, you are very different in regards to a lot of other bodybuilders or people that train, because I can't take my foot completely off the gas. I find that very, very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, like if I miss my supplements for the day, I'm thinking, but I haven't done what I normally do. It's not because I feel like I have to, it's because I want to.
Yeah. It's like your thing.
Yeah. And same, like you said, with training, like I love training. It's not, you know, every boxing day I'm like, I want to train. Especially because I'm fueled up from having more food, but I'm not fit, like you said earlier, I'm not like trying to offset what I've eaten. I'm trying to utilize that energy that I feel, you know, I'm like pumped to get in the gym and really train.
Totally. And that's the mindset difference. It's like the excitement of putting the enjoyment of the food to good use, rather than that I have to train to get rid of some of this because I've eaten too much.
Yeah. And it's in regards to that as well, you know, when you are thinking about what foods, if you're in control of your household and you're the one doing Christmas dinner, you know, you have got a good influence there as to what you buy in and what's going to then be available to you. So if there's certain things that you buy because you feel like everyone else will want it, but you want it, but you're not going to have it, you know, things like that, maybe just don't buy it. Because a lot of the time I think people don't actually notice. And if you're hosting, you're like, I need 8 desserts. And it's like, well, you probably don't need that many options. Like, you know, the first Christmas Eve,
a pavlova, a pudding.
Someone might need some chocolate, but that person likes toffee. And it's like, you end up, and then I really struggle with wasting food. So, you know, if you're buying these things that are fresh and whatever else, they're not going to have that much of a sell-by date. So if you overbuy, it's like, what are you going to then do? Throw it away? Or,
exactly.
You know, and again, it's not a good way to go. But I think the undercurrent of today's podcast is trying to plan to set yourself up for success, but not over plan to then not enjoy it.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's no easy feat, to be honest. You know, every year I'll come across lots of different things that I personally find quite hard psychologically, and I imagine you come across different things each year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does take quite a long time to get here. It's an interesting one because I was reflecting on this the other day, like, you know, at different stages of this bodybuilding journey that we do, things are really acute and heightened. So for anybody who's just off stage recently or come to the end of their season this year, this is going to be really important to you because you're still going to be holding on to the institutionalization of like bodybuilding right now. So it's going to be very hard for you to let go and have choice. And choice is very scary at this point for a lot of people. So these kind of tips and tools and writing down and preparing and setting an expectation for yourself are going to help you manage it. Whereas for somebody who's maybe deep in their off season and hasn't competed for maybe the last year or potentially more, you're going to be in a much better position. Well, not everyone, but you'll probably find that you're in a safer sort of mindset and a mind space that you can have choice and be cool with it and go to the gym and it really won't faze you. And then maybe after gym, you'll have a few things off, but you'll still be mindful of it. So there's like, it really does depend on where you are at. Like, you know, last time I stepped on stage was 2019. We're at the end of 21. Right now in my body, I could eat what I want and I won't really move very far because I'm just so maintained in this body weight, and I know roughly what's going on. If I have some food off plan, I know how to counteract it, and I feel very comfortable here. So for me, and I don't want to sound like I'm saying that like it's a great thing, it's just, it's very comfortable. I can have stuff off and it's cool, and I won't worry about it. Whereas I've got other people who are deep in their off season, who one of them who was on stage very early this year in March, her off season started more around summertime, so she's had a lot longer to be in the off season, but she's still having to carefully manage the balance because she's fluctuating in weight quite heavily, and that's due to just maintenance hasn't been quite figured out, and hormones haven't quite been figured out, etc. as well. So everyone will be at a different point at this, and you just have to be kind to yourself. I know that's a theme we say, but be really kind to yourself and think about, you know, do what's right for you on the day. And if you can catch the thoughts, if you're at that point where you can catch the negative thinking processes, be sensible and do something with them. Don't let them control you, if that makes sense. You've got to try and control them and sit down and go, okay, well, why am I telling myself this narrative over and over again? It's something that we need to kind of change so that you can be comfortable with the choices that you make.
Yeah, I know what you mean by getting to that point in off season where you're pretty much, you might hover between like a kilogram or two.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's pretty comfy. So
I definitely find that at the moment, because I have got an appetite, and the thing is, I can eat quite a lot, to be honest. So when I'm in an environment to do that, especially like, I mean, going to meetups with different bodybuilders and stuff, you know what it's like. You sort of, you go for a meal and then you've got like baked goods come out and everything else.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and it's quite a laugh as well. You know, I can keep up with the men, and it's quite funny really, because I can just keep eating. But then what I would then do is not to punish myself. Like, I really enjoy immersing that moment, and then I have a couple of days where I go really low calorie.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, and that's totally, and that works for you. Like, that's helping you keep cool about your choices.
Yeah.
So
so many different ways.
Yeah, and actually, part of this as well, if you're in a place to do so, is the intuitive eating approach around Christmas. And if for those of you who haven't, we did a video on intuitive eating a few weeks back, so go and check that out. But the intuitive side of things is thinking about, right, am I hungry? Like physically, and if I am, feed myself. But if I'm not, just wait till that sort of feeling arises and eat when you feel like eating. And just being really mindful to your physiology, I think, is helpful, because if you are out of sync and off plan and a bit out of your routine, and you're having choice foods, you might find that certain foods will make you feel fuller that you've not really had ever before, so, or less, you know. And just trying to kind of navigate that a little bit more intuitively, rather than thinking of it like I must track like a bodybuilder for that time. Just kind of going, I'm going to go into this day with a rough idea, but I'm just going to sense out when I want to eat, how much I want to eat, and what that looks like at the time in the moment. Only if you can do that, you know, obviously. But that's another way to think about it, rather than going in with the mindset that I have to track everything. It's that just... I'm going to see what comes up, and if I want to eat, I'll eat, and if I don't, then that's cool.
Yeah, because I've been on that journey myself, and now it is really nice to actually do that. It's really cool to just look at a menu that I haven't looked at for, you know, 10 times before going to the restaurant. And I've even, you know, got to the point where it got really silly, to be honest, and I'd phone and say, have you got this in? Because I didn't want to arrive there and they say it's not on the menu, and that completely takes over what you're actually trying to do by having a meal out. And I almost could just, you know, make the meal at home myself, because I'm not actually having the enjoyment of, I'm so on edge to know that until that meal is in front of me that I wanted, that I've broke down in my head, I'm not actually living my life, because I'm so stressed out before, you know, approaching a restaurant. But now it's so much nicer to be able to sit down and go, I'll have a bit of that. And, you know, if someone goes, oh, should we share that? Normally it'd be like, oh God, that's another X amount of calories or whatever. Now I'm like, okay. I still take my own sauce when I go for a meal, but you know, I
know that's
I just take my light mayo.
The Sarah special in the bag. Like,
and lettuce.
and lettuce. That was hilarious when you walked up to the WNBF. For all the listeners, Sarah brought to the WNBF UK a lettuce as her companion for her judging panel day out.
Is when I met Lara, who was another one of the judges, and she said, "Oh, you've got a lettuce." I was like, "Well, yeah, I just don't like to, leave myself too exposed." So I had a lettuce and like half a cooked chicken in my handbag just in case.
Your average bodybuilder.
But there's certain quirky things that everyone will pick up on this journey, and I used to feel like really self-conscious, but now I'm like, oh, do you know what? Like, if that's what I want to do and people say something, then whatever, I can make it into a laugh. But before I'd be like, oh my God, they hate going out with me. Why do I have to be like this?
Yeah.
Like all this negative thoughts. And I used to like, that's probably the best way to look at it. Why am I like this? Why do I feel like this?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately it's because we care about our sport and what we're trying to do. It comes away from even the aesthetic appeal of what we're trying to do. It's what sits well for you psychologically, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like nourishing yourself with the foods you enjoy and knowing that they're close by on hand when you're maybe doing something out with your normal set of circumstances is helpful, because it just helps you kind of feel like, great, okay, in the event I might not have food or find food today or have like a place where I can go and get stuff that I want, I've brought this with me. And it's just that, it's that again, creating your environment and being prepared so that you're never going to feel like you're doing something that goes against your own values.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's a bit like when you go into Boxing Day, isn't it? Not thinking Christmas Eve I had a meal in the evening, say Christmas Day, oh God, I had all this food, laying in bed thinking, well, I had this and this. And then, Boxing Day, it's very common for it to be a celebration day with your family as well, like bubble and squeak or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you wake up with all these negative thoughts and carry it on into that day, it then wipes out another day. And then it's just this snowball effect all the way till New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, isn't it? So again, scenario wise, if you have got something where you're going to go for a meal or you've got a cold meats and bubble and squeak with your family on Boxing Day, taking those same tactics, having a protein shake in the morning, going for a long walk. If you can get to the gym, go smash a workout, think about having your water. I always like to almost load myself up on the fluids before I eat my main meal on these days, because you get full and then you don't want to drink as much. Just have thoughts about it, but try not to overstress and let that dominate the actual period of time.
Yeah, totally. About. Couldn't agree more with you. Could not agree more with you. And yeah, like it's I suppose the only other thing I would say is on a front of being mindful of is like emotional eating around Christmas as well. Like it is a time of like, it can be a time of loads, it can bring up loads of different things for different people this time of year. And it's darker nights, we're obviously all going through this nonsense in the news with everything like being kind of going into this crazy period of rising cases and all of this with the COVID stuff. And it can affect you subconsciously as well as consciously. Like a lot of things can be kind of swirling around your head. And before you know it, you're maybe like a bit low, you're grabbing for like the chips and dip, and it can't, that side of it can be, you've got to be mindful as well, because I know for a fact that around this time of year is quite challenging for me. My brother lives in New Zealand. I never get to see him. I've not seen him in the last like however long. It's gutting because every time I go for Christmas, the last 3 years I've been for Christmas dinner with my folks and he's not there. And it's like, there's a big chunk of the Noel's missing, what I mean?
Yeah.
And stuff like that can bother people. And you just have to kind of, I think, be really kind to yourself in whatever scenario you're in, whether that's the joyous, let's all eat shitloads of food, or whether that's the, maybe there's some stuff that you're that can be a bit emotional for you as well. And just being mindful of the emotional side of the patterns of behavior around food as well. So I guess I wanted to just throw that in here because it is a factor that I think some people, well, I suppose all of this is emotional, what we're talking about, because it's about how you feel about yourself. But just other things that might crop up that your hand's starting to reach for XYZ as well.
Yeah. Well, like you say there, you know, some people it's going to be the first year they might experience with someone that they've lost this year, or, you know, I can resonate completely with that. The year I lost my granddad, it was like, this is the first year of my whole life that I've had a Christmas without him. And the emotional side did kick in. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have a bit of extra cake because he liked cake.
Yeah.
You know, really weird patterns and things come in when you grieve. And there's, you know, because you're a bodybuilder, it doesn't mean you're not human.
Exactly.
You know?
And this time of year,
pressure.
Yeah, it is like, it's a family time of year. Not all families are like, you know, not every family is a big happy family. You know, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and in your relationships, etc. And so it's just exactly that. It's being okay with that, but just being mindful of it, I guess.
Yeah, and in trying to enjoy the time, you know, whatever that means for you, people that are listening. If you enjoy doing certain things each year, and especially if it's your first time going into a Christmas period as a bodybuilder, just like you say, be kind to yourself, read the situation. It would be this is what Stephen always says to me, it'd be very hard to do enough damage to completely throw you off track in one day. Like,
very true.
You know, you've got to think it would be like 3,000 calories over your normal calories that you're taking on board for you to even put on a pound of, you know, roughly 3,000 to 3,500 calories to even consider putting on a pound. Now, if you look at things like doing your expenditure, keeping your fluid up, blah, 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 you know, you really can negate that. And it doesn't need to be an issue, but it's a psychological element that often gets us. So I mean, hopefully this has helped people just almost process things that might come up from our experiences, and, you know, our rambles that we like to try and get out in the community, because like today, you know, we've had so much good feedback from the pod about posting Offseason.
Shout out to Little
and we only went live, you know. We haven't even been live for 24 hours, and I've had, like yourself, several messages saying please keep doing what you're doing. So you know, it's great. And our next episode, we're going to start talking about more the competitive stuff, getting ready for next year to compete and all of this type of stuff. So
what that's like, choosing your show, how to go about that, lots of these cool things coming up.
So hopefully this will take us into the Christmas period nicely, and everyone listening has enjoyed. Well, we started the pods in January doing a one-off, and it's just been so cool. So roll on 2022, where lots of things will happen for both of us, and hopefully for all the listeners as well.
100%. I think that's a really good note to end on there.
And a massive happy Christmas.
I know.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
A virtual present for you all.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. It has been an awesome 2021. We may try and get one out before the new year is in, but it's been really good. Keep sending us any topics that you want to see. Keep sharing all of the good stuff. And we love, like Sarah just said, we love to hear what impact these have had for you, because it really helps us understand just the kind of the ebb and flow of the topics and what's important. So thank you very much for getting behind us and listening, commenting, sharing, and all that good stuff.
And we look forward to the new year. And if anyone wants to reach out, if people tag us, it's for me on Instagram, Sarah Parker _BB.
And Steph _F Noble Figure Pro, or Pro Prep Coaching. You can find me over there as well.
So reach out, get in touch, and we look forward to 2022.
Whoop.
Thanks, Steph. Peace.